Then we come down to our textures. We're actually going to change this back to white. When you're using textures, you just want this on white so that it doesn't tint it. Unless you want it tinted, of course, then you can change the tint. So I can show you right now. You can change the tint of this wood, and it's pretty cool. So maybe we will tint it a little bit. Sorry, back to the materials. You can also lock this inspector. So if I want to click different things and not lose this and have to go back and click it, you can just click this little lock button, and that will lock that. So now I can go into textures. I can click these. It's not going to show the information in the inspector until I unlock this. But that's good, because if I misclick, I can still be where I want to be, drag this stuff in, and not have to go back and reselect it. So normal map into normal map, plug everything in, right? And come down to our materials. Now you can just click and drag, or you can click the object. Now this object, I'm going to unlock this. This object has a parent of what we named it, right? Here are our LODs underneath as child objects. So you can see what they look like by clicking them, right? And it will it'll undraw the rest as you're looking at them like that. This LOD group component on the parent works as I mentioned in Blender, but now I can finally demonstrate. So as I move further away with the camera, you can see its distance right here. It's going to change this to a different LOD. Now we are showing LOD 1. You can see it right there. Scroll back further. We're seeing LOD 2. So I'm going to deselect that, and you can actually have a look at it there and see the change. See that? So that's to optimize our game and help us basically keep things performant as the player is not able to perfectly see things at a distance. So we can change these distances. Clicking this, it's going to highlight the world, kind of whitewash it so that you can see what you're doing. And that's okay. As soon as you let go, it'll go back to normal. So I think these two are pretty similar, so I think we can have this pretty close. Right? And only when the camera's pretty close, we can see these beveled edges. We don't need to see them way back here, in my opinion. So for this one, we want to go back pretty far, I think, because it looks junky. It looks like it's not the same model at all. Now that's perfectly fine. So when we add post-processing effects, as I've mentioned, we can get rid of all this, the stuttering step edges and stuff like that, and we can fix all kinds of things, add depth of field, a little bit of blur, things like that. So don't worry about that for now. Now culled, this red section here, is just going to erase it, and that's really nice. If you want it, if it's super far away and you've got a dense world with, you know, stuff that blocks other things at a certain distance, yeah, you want to just get rid of it. So let's go. Maybe we'll bring this a little bit closer, and we'll drag this one out. Good. Okay. And if you want to not like have to zoom in and go back to that, you can just double click on something and it will focus it. Recenter and focus it. Okay, great. So that's your LOD component. That's important to note, as said before, that this is set up just like this for us already, and because we named these in Blender the way we did, underscore LOD 0, underscore all in caps, LOD 0, right? If you name things like that and export them the way we did, Unity will set this up for you. So that's great. Now back to the material. So as I said, you could click and drag, but it's important to note, let me just make right click here, and I'm going to create a cube just to demonstrate something again. So your mesh filter, or your mesh renderer, right here, if you have a mesh that's a model that does not use LODs, right away it's going to give you the mesh renderer right here, and this is where you set your material. So if I drag this over here, there we go. Now that's okay, so I can tint this red so that we can see what's happening. Now if I go to, if I just drag it onto this one here, it's only going to attach the material to the mesh renderer that I'm looking at right now. So that's probably LOD 0, right? And there we are, wooden crate 1K. So if I keep scrolling back, it's not going to have the material on the second one because I haven't done it yet. The mesh renderer is on individual LODs. So we need to, you can actually just select all of these if you want. Click on something, hold shift, click on the bottom one. Or also, which is good to mention, you can hold control and click things if you don't want to, take the whole list. You can just click separate things. So clicking this, shift, last one, we can just drag this onto the element here, and because they have the same components, it's going to allow us to edit multiple at the same time. So we just click this, and now it's red no matter where we go. And that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So it's just important to note that when you do use LODs, you need to add the material to every single mesh, not just the first one, the visible one. So if there's no LOD system, it's as simple as this. We're going to delete that cube. You can just hit delete on your keyboard to delete stuff. All right, I'm going to change this back to white, the texture that we were using. Another thing I want to do, I think, is increase the bump a little bit, so don't go too crazy with this. As you can see, you get some strange looks after a while, but we can change this maybe to 1.5 or maybe even 2. Let's go 2. Now the occlusion I want to show you. You can choose how much influence this has, right? So this one specifically you can see. Now until we add some post-processing, it's not going to look extremely different, but you can see that it adds some darker shadows where these black lines are on this picture, so that's fantastic. Another thing to note is that when you're in your material tab, if you want to find where this texture is, if you want to do something with these textures, just click them and it'll bring you right there. That works for a lot of things in your inspector. Likewise, if you go to a model or something, you can go to the mesh renderer, and if you want to find the material where it's at, just click it. Click it here, and it'll bring you right there in your assets folder. The next thing maybe we want to do is create a prefab out of this. So what a prefab is something that you've attached components to, done things to, that we can actually save into one of these folders and just drag in exactly the way we've made it already. So all these materials will already be set up. We can add a collider to say LOD 0. Now that's not overly smart if you're using physics, so why don't we just actually duplicate this, right? And call this collider. We can rename this. Adding components. Just click this button down here. You can search for things. So right now we can type in collider, and you can see there's different kinds of colliders. There's mesh colliders, which is actually going to create the shape of exactly what we have here. You can use capsule colliders, sphere colliders. Box colliders are probably the most performant, and I recommend using them everywhere you possibly can, other than any other collider. Okay, so let's click that. Now you can see these green lines as long as you have gizmos turned on. All right, you can turn this on and off like that. So if you have gizmos turned on, you can actually see the collider around it if you have it selected, which is great. Likewise, with the reset on the transform, we can right-click and remove components. We can right-click and click remove components. So why would we want to do that? Is because we duplicated a mesh, so we don't want to actually show the mesh overlapping. You see the artifacts you get, right? We don't want that. We just want the collider on it. So I'm going to hit Control Z, same undo button. As I said before, Control Y will actually redo. Okay, so we'll remove these components. So I'm going to remove the mesh filter, remove the mesh renderer, and we now just have a collider, which is perfect. That's right there, and it's not attached to any LOD, meaning that it's going to be there all the time. Now another thing we can do, if you don't want to actually duplicate a mesh and you feel like you're getting messy here, we can actually add this collider to the parent object as well. The problem with it is if I just add a component here, box collider, why? Right? Why? Well, because it's going to place itself around the origin of the object. It's not going, there's no actual mesh filter, mesh renderer, there's nothing on here to give the box collider information on where to be. So we remove this, right? Come down to the collider, without even duplicating it, we'll just delete this. And go to LOD 1, add a box collider, right? We can right click and say copy component. It's going to copy the information, the exact shape of this box collider, as long as they have a 1-to-1 size ratio and stuff like that on the component that you attach to now. So we're going to click copy component, and we can just remove this now. We can say remove component, and go over to create the create asset, the parent object, add the box collider again, and it is down here now, but we'll say paste component values, and you can say boom. So now the box collider is on the parent object. We don't have to have an extra object with a transform in the world. It's, just a tiny little space saver there. So now to create the prefab, let's go to our assets folder. Let's make a new folder called prefabs. Okay, and don't be mistaken. We can edit the crap out of this afterwards. So we're going to drag it in and say original prefab. So you can either click this little arrow here. What this is going to do, allow you to edit the prefab in the scene view here. What we really want to do is go down to our folder and double click on this asset here. So no matter how many cubes I have in the world, let's duplicate these a bunch of times. Let's just place these all the way, let's place these everywhere. So if I double click this asset here, if I change anything about this, right, you have your same X and Z hotkeys here. If I just crank this up like that and go back, it changed all of my prefabs. Now that is actually awesome, because when we go to create our broken object and add scripts to this and stuff like that, all we have to do is double click on this and add our components here, and it'll do it to every single cube or every single crate that we have in the world. So that's fantastic. So I'm going to set this back to 1, right? Boom, and it fixed everything up. So that's basically how you create a prefab. I'll show you how to edit that and add more components to it later when we add the script. As mentioned before, you can click on stuff, Shift, select more, and we'll just delete those for now. So we have this here. Another thing to note is your prefab should be at a 000 position. So we'll just change this back to 000. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this episode, guys. We're going to first of all, let's save our scene. So you go File, Save, and save as is just saving the scene, only the scene. So save. What that's going to do is save this scene right here, all the information that we've placed this cube here. We've placed our crate asset right in the middle there. So one thing else I wanted to show you, if we go into the file that we've saved this in, Crash Course Project, Assets, here's everything we have right here. Now these metadata files are information that we've placed on the materials. So the materials, basically we've changed the smoothness, we've changed the textures that are on them. These meta files, this meta file right here is going to keep that information for us. Models, same thing, the size, things like that, position, all that stuff, prefab scenes, textures, all that. So saving the project is a good idea, but it won't affect anything you've brought into the project. That's all still going to be there, even if you close without saving your project. So file, save the scene, file, save the project, and you're good to go. So now we can just close this, and we can start up again next episode. So the next episode is actually going to be back in Blender. What I want to do is introduce people to rigging and animation. So we're going to create the coin first. That way we can see how rigging works with a simple single bone. It's going, I guess, bounce up and down and maybe rotate. And then after that, we have a good basis to go on for creating our character. And we'll get into some more Blender stuff, like more modifiers. Then we'll bring it into Unity and we'll set them up to interact with each other. So that's it for this one, guys. Hope to see you in the next episode. Thanks. Bye.